What physically happens to your body right after death? It is difficult to generalize how people will respond to the subject of death because each of us is unique, but we generally feel uncomfortable at the thought of our own mortality. What often underlies this uneasiness, however, is thinking about the process of dying and the fear of a prolonged or painful death, rather than the state of being dead. Ironically, despite spending a lifetime walking around in the same body and doing our best to care for it, few seem to wonder what happens to their physical remains right after death occurs. Here is a timeline of the processes involved, assuming the deceased remains undisturbed, including the transition from primary flaccidity to secondary flaccidity. At the moment of death. We often think of the moment of death as that time at which the heartbeat and breathing stop. We are learning, however, that death isn't instant. Our brains are now thought to continue to work for 10 minutes or so after we die, meaning that our brains may, in some way, be aware of our death. The research, however, is only very preliminary. In the hospital setting, there are a few requirements doctors use to define death. These include the absence of a pulse, the absence of breathing, the absence of reflexes, and the absence of pupillary constriction in response to a bright light. In an emergency setting, paramedics look for the 5 signs of irreversible death to determine when resuscitation not possible. The definition of brain death includes the absence of brainstem reflexes, the inability to breathe without a ventilator, and neurologic unresponsiveness. The diagnosis is used to declare a legal death, such as before an organ donation, at hour 1. At the moment of death, all of the muscles in the body relax, a state called primary flaccidity. Eyelids lose their tension, the pupils dilate, the jaw might fall open, and the body's joints and limbs are flexible. With the loss of tension in the muscles, the skin will sag, which can cause prominent joints and bones in the body, such as the jaw or hips, to become pronounced. As muscles relax, sphincter tone diminishes, and urine and feces will pass. Within minutes of the heart stopping, a process called Rigor Mortis causes the body to grow pale as blood drains from the smaller veins in the skin. This process may be more visible in those with light skin rather than darker skin. The human heart beats more than 2.5 billion times during the average human lifespan, circulating about 5.6 liters, 6 quarts, of blood through the circulatory system. At the same time, the body begins to cool from its normal temperature of 37 C until reaching the ambient temperature around it. Known as Rigor Mortis or the death chill, the decrease in body temperature follows a somewhat linear progression, 1.5 degrees per hour. The expected decrease in body temperature during Rigor Mortis can help forensic scientists approximate the time of death, assuming the body hasn't completely cooled or been exposed to extreme environmental temperatures. At hours 2 to 6. Because the heart no longer pumps blood, gravity begins to pull it to the areas of the body closest to the ground, a process called Rigor Mortis. If the body remains undisturbed long enough, the parts of the body nearest the ground can develop a reddish-purple discoloration from the accumulating blood. Embalmers sometimes refer to this as the post-mortem stain. Beginning approximately in the 3rd hour after death, chemical changes within the body's cells cause all of the muscles to begin stiffening, known as rigor mortis. With rigor mortis, the first muscles affected will be the eyelids, jaw, and neck. Over the next several hours, rigor mortis will spread into the face and down through the chest, abdomen, arms, and legs until it finally reaches the fingers and toes. Interestingly, the old custom of placing coins on the eyelids of the deceased might have originated from the desire to keep the eyes shut since rigor mortis affects them soonest. Also, it is not unusual for infants and young children who die to not display rigor mortis, possibly due to their smaller muscle mass. At hours 7 to 12. Maximum muscle stiffness throughout the body occurs after roughly 12 hours due to rigor mortis, although this will be affected by the decedent's age, physical condition, gender, the air temperature, and other factors. At this point, the limbs of the deceased are difficult to move or manipulate. The knees and elbows will be slightly flexed, and fingers or toes can appear unusually crooked at hour 12 and beyond. After reaching a state of maximum rigor mortis, The muscles will begin to loosen due to continued chemical changes within the cells and internal tissue decay. The process, known as secondary flaccidity, occurs over a period of 1 to 3 days and is influenced by external conditions such as temperature. During secondary flaccidity, the skin will begin to shrink, creating the illusion that hair and nails are growing. Rigor mortis will then dissipate in the opposite direction, from the fingers and toes to the face, over a period of up to 48 hours. Once secondary flaccidity is complete, all of the muscles of the body will again be relaxed, briefly. Starting at the moment of death, physical changes begin to take place in the body. The classic rigor mortis or stiffening of the body begins around 3 hours after death and is maximal at around 12 hours after death. Beginning at around the 12-hour mark, the body again becomes more flaccid as it was at the time of death. Some people do not want to think about the changes in the body after death, whereas others wish to know. Everyone is different, and it is a very personal decision. For those who wish to know, however, we are learning that the bodily changes leading up to death, and after death, aren't simply random decomposition. Our bodies are actually designed to shut down and die at some time in a programmed manner.